welcome to my show Indus Cuisine, and I'm your chef Basim Akhund. We're back with a new episode from the heart of Pakistan. Today's recipe is very interesting, and it is, you could say, a speciality that every Pakistani household loves. They also love this recipe, but every Pakistani household has their own technique or own way of making it. But this doesn't mean that this recipe changes from house to house. It changes from region to region. So this recipe has originated from the province of Punjab, and you can say since people have been taking care of livestock, or since people have been towards the agricultural side in Punjab, this recipe has been a very integral part of their cuisine. So today's recipe is very interesting, and we call it Chukander Gosht. Now, what does this mean in the local language? Chukander basically means beetroot, and Gosht means veal meat. So we're making beetroot stew. That could be the easier way of explaining it to you in the Western terms, but it's not something which is close to the beetroot stew which you have in other countries. This recipe is a recipe that has originated from Pakistan, from the heart of Pakistan, from the villages of Pakistan, from the province of Punjab, and it has become, you could say, a part where everyone loves to come together for having this. It's a feast, you could say. So the ingredients for today are very easy, and you can easily find them in any market or in any superstore around you. So you need around 1 kilogram of veal. Now when you're using veal, you will buy the boneless piece, and then I'll tell you how to cut it, because every dish has their own sizes and shapes when it comes to meat. For this you will be using boneless meat. Then you need some red chili powder, you need some salt, you need some black peppercorns, not black peppercorn powder. Then you need some ginger, garlic, black cardamom. Then you need some cloves, you need a cup of oil, you need some lemon juice, you need some green chilies. You need around 1 kilogram of beetroot, which should be peeled, and I'll tell you how to cook it. Then you need around 2 pieces of onions, 2 tomatoes, a little bit of coriander. You need some turmeric powder, you need some cumin seeds, you need some coriander powder, and you need some dried red chili also. Now these are all the ingredients, and this recipe will be made in 3 parts. The first part is that if you start cooking the veal just on open heat without a pressure cooker, it will take around 2.5 hours to 3 hours to get soft and tender. But we do not have that much of time. So what we'll do is we'll use a pressure cooker, and for that I'll bring the pressure cooker forward first. So the cooker goes here, and I'll put it on heat. Once it comes to heat, then I'll tell you what to do next. And now when I'm saying when it comes to heat, it doesn't mean that you really need to make it piping hot. It just means that I'm going to add some water. But for the first thing, what I'll do is I'll just clean it a bit from inside. It's clean, but if I feel that the pressure cooker is a little wet or a little moist after washing, I always prefer cleaning it up. Why? Because I like boiling my meat or the vegetables I'm using in purified water, or you could say mineral water. Why? Because it gives a nice flavor. That's what I prefer. So once the water comes to boil, then I'll let you know what to do. But before that, you need to start cutting the meat. For that, I'll shift the board. I'll take the green one back, and I'll bring the red one forward, and then we should start chopping it. Now, what's the reason behind changing the board? You all know about it because I've been telling you about it. The reason is that you will not be mixing different types of boards. Okay, I've washed it. This is just a little bit of blood because it's obviously raw meat. Now, as you can see, there's a joint over here, so I'm just cutting through it. Keep the fat on of the beef. You need to make cubes. So what I'll do is I'll just first cut it into fillets, you can say, equal fillets, so that you get a balanced texture in each and every piece of beef when you're having it. Okay, so I'm just going to cut it, and I'll just take this part out of the meat. So just slide it and throw it on the side. This is done. Now, as you can see, this part is a bit thick. What I'll do is I'll just cut it from the center. Keep the fat on. The reason behind it is, I'll let you know. The reason is that the fat will basically melt down in the pressure cooker, and it will give a nice flavor to the broth. And we'll be using that broth also. Why? Because that has a lot of flavor. You'll be cutting around an inch long piece and around half an inch thick piece. Remember to make the meat of equal sizes. If you cut it equally, what will happen is you'll get the perfect texture. If you do not cut it equally, some pieces of the meat will be tender and some might be a little tough. So you need to maintain all of these things. So just cut them, and then I shall toss it in the pressure cooker. But once you toss it in the pressure cooker, you need to understand one thing, that you need to add a few things in it so that it becomes a little soft. As you can see, the meat is a little light brown, or you could even say it's a little pink. Why? Because it's veal. Veal is basically the smaller version of a cow, and it is much more easier to cook and it gets soft quickly. Okay, if you see some strands are sticking together, just make sure you pull them apart. Okay, now this is done. Now what you'll do is you'll take some ginger and garlic and you'll add it to the pressure cooker. But before that, I'll just pick up the meat and I'll toss it over here. The water should be as much so that the pressure cooker or the meat is basically completely submerged. I'll just show you a shot. It needs to be properly in it. Why? Because you want to boil it. That's the reason. Now what you need to do is you need some ginger. So take some ginger. I'm just going to use my paring knife. Take around half a tablespoon equivalent and just cut it in thin slices. I'm cutting it in thin slices so that once it goes into the water, it will release its flavor. Then we'll take one piece of garlic, just cut it slightly like this and throw it here. Just take around 3-4 pieces of peppercorn, add it over here, and just one piece of black cardamom. This is done. Add a little bit of salt, around half a teaspoon. I want my meat to be seasoned nicely. And then just give it a lid and let it cook properly. Place it properly, press it down, turn it around. Okay, so now the beef is in the pressure cooker. Once the whistle starts blowing or this part of the cooker comes up, that means that there is even pressure in the pressure cooker inside, and then you should start counting 25 minutes. Okay, this is done. Now the next step, what do you need to do? You need to get ready with the beetroot. Beetroot is a vegetable that grows beneath the ground. So remember, when something or a vegetable is under the ground, it takes more time compared to vegetables such as cucumbers, or you could say onions, or you could say tomatoes. Basically, onions are also underground, but onions have a different texture. A vegetable such as potatoes, beetroots, radishes, all these take a little more time because the concentration is a little dense. So what I'll do first is I'll take a wok, and we shall bring the wok to heat. And once it comes to heat, what I'll do is I'll add some water. So till the time the wok comes to heat, and when I add water, that's the next step, we shall just cut the beetroot. The beetroot will not go in as whole. The beetroot must go in as pieces. So just cut the beetroot in half first. It's nice and red from inside. And then cut it into smaller pieces. Be very careful. Why? Because the knife can slip. So what I'll do is I'll make 4 pieces of every half. So we're making 8 pieces of a single beetroot. Remember that. And then I shall add it to the water. The water must not be boiling. It should be room temperature. Why? Because whenever you're boiling a vegetable, remember, which grows underground, the process is you always put it in cold water and bring it to heat so that the distribution is equal. And if you're boiling a vegetable which grows over the ground, you add it into boiling water. That's the rule of every chef or culinary school. Okay, reduce the heat, add some water. So now add the water. And as I've told you, the pan is hot, but the beetroot and the water is still at room temperature. So now I'll toss this in and add around, you could say, half a teaspoon of salt, and that is it. The beetroots go in, and we'll add around half a teaspoon of salt. Okay, so now till the time this is cooking, we'll go for a short break, and once we're back, I'll let you know what to do next. Keep watching Indus Cuisine. Welcome back. You're watching Indus Cuisine and I'm your chef Basim Akhund. During the break, I just did two things. I waited for the meat to cook, and as you can see, the meat is nicely cooked. It's tender, it's basically falling apart. And on the other hand, I waited that the beetroot would boil nicely. So all these things are done, and now we should quickly continue with the recipe. So first, what do you need? You need a frying pan. I'll bring it to heat and I'll add some oil. The oil must go in, and the show mustn't stop. Okay, this is done. Okay, reduce the heat to medium because I do not want the pan to get really hot, because if you overheat it, the oil might burn the onions. Okay, firstly what do you need is you need some onions, and you need to fry them on high heat, and you need to slice them. So I'll take the root off. And I'll throw it away. Why? If you want to slice the onions and if the root is on, then the onions won't fall apart. Why? Because the root holds the onions together. You must remember this. Slowly and gradually turn it around. This is done. Now, as you can see, the pan is hot. Transfer the onions. And add around a pinch of salt. On the other hand, the beef I cooked had some water left. This is the broth. I will not throw it away, and I shall use it in this recipe. Just shake it around and just press it down. Now, on the other hand, you need some garlic, which needs to be finely chopped. So I'll take 4 cloves for now, and whatever I've used, I'll keep it on the side. I'll bring it close. I'll smash it like this. And then finely chop it. Just go really close as you can. And transfer all the garlic in the oil. Once this is done, mix it up. And now get ready with the ginger. For this, you need to flatten the ginger out. So I'll take this part off and I'll just cut slices. The remaining is not needed, so I'll put it on the side. And now I'll finely slice the ginger. And this is done. Half of the ginger will go in the pan right now, and half I shall keep on the side for later. Mix it in. And let it fry evenly. Okay, now on the other hand, I need 2 tomatoes. Take the eye of the tomato out and throw this in the dustbin. This goes on the side. Cut from between and finely slice it. The tomatoes must be cooked in the oil to the point that they start falling apart, or you can also say they become so soft that you can convert it into a nice mash. You don't want the pulp to be sticking together with the peel. Why? Because then the flavor will not be amalgamated with the sauce evenly. Okay, so now this will take around 2 minutes on high heat. So till time this is frying, what I'll do is I shall just clear up and then continue. So as you can see, the onions are nicely brown. So it takes around 7 to 8 minutes for the onions to get light brown, but it just takes 45 seconds for the onions to get really dark brown. As you can see, they are quickly changing color. Why? Because they lose moisture towards the end very quickly. So I'll just put the stove on pilot because I don't want to overcook them or burn them. And now I'll transfer all the tomatoes in the pan. Okay, so tomatoes go in. And I'll add around another pinch of salt on the tomatoes. I'm adding some salt so that the tomatoes start breaking down, and increase the heat to full and mix it now. Give it a lid and let it cook on high heat for 2 minutes. So when this is cooking, what we'll do is we'll get ready with the green chilies. You want the green chilies to be finely chopped for this recipe. Just keep an eye on the onions, you don't want them to burn. So you have to control the heat really finely. Okay, just take a look here. Mix it up. And now start breaking the tomatoes down. Add the green chilies so that the oil gets nice and spicy. And add the red chilies dried in it. Give it a lid and let it cook for another 30 seconds, but reduce the heat a little. Why? Because it's a little too hot, you could say. This is done. Okay, so the next step is you need to add some spices. I'm going to add the spices right now. Why? Because there is oil on the top, and when the spices go in the oil, they get a chance to fry, and what happens is they release more flavor and they bring out a nice texture in the recipe also. Okay, this is done. Now we need to start mashing the tomatoes. Bring it on one side and start pressing them down with your spatula. This is done. Increase the heat to full and now add just a little bit of water, around half a cup. Why am I doing this? So that the temperature of the pan comes down and the tomatoes get another chance to cook nicely. But around 45 seconds later, this water will evaporate because the heat in the pan is really high. This is done. The water has evaporated. Why? Because you can see the oil splitting again. Now reduce the heat to low and start adding the spices. So first we'll add the red chili powder. Then we'll add the turmeric powder. Then you'll add the cumin seeds, which I shall first place over here and just pass my knife 2-3 times. Why? Because once you pass the knife, the flavor will be released from the cumin in a better way. Take some peppercorns, place them over here, spread them out, and just hit them. I'm just cracking the shell, and I'll pick it up and transfer it in the oil. This is done. Now just push them down and give it a chance to fry. this is done. Now, whatever you've used, pick it up and keep it on the side. And now we'll add some cloves. We'll add some black cardamom. And now we shall add the ginger. Just a little bit more. Why am I adding more ginger right now? The reason is because I'm going to toss in the beef. The beef goes in, but before that you shall add the coriander powder and mix it up a bit. So now you'll add the beef and keep the plate on the side. Increase the heat to full and start mixing it. Pick up a spatula. And on high heat, now you'll add a little bit of the broth, around 2 cups. And let it cook on high heat. Mix it up, place a lid on top, and once the water dies down or dries down, I'll let you know what to do next. So as you can see, the water I had added in the beef, around 2 cups, has dried down. The reason behind that is when the heat is high and then there is more oil, when you add water into it, the evaporation fastens up. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll add the beetroots. And now we shall add some water. This recipe is a dry recipe, so that's why I was comparing it just a little bit with the form of a stew. But as I said, it's a Pakistani recipe and it is not a Western one. So this one is a little more towards the drier side and it's a little more oily. So mix it up. And when you've covered the beetroot properly with all the spices, now we shall add the broth. The broth is very important for this recipe. Do not add water because this is where the flavor comes from. You want to partially cover the beetroot, remember that. Be a little careful when you're dealing with water on your set or in your kitchen. Why? Because you don't want to drop it. Just shake it up a bit so that the spices which are sticking down to the bottom of the pan are mixed back again. So now just shake it like this. Shake it up. Give a lid on top and let it cook. So now this will take around 5 to 6 minutes on high heat. And till the time this happens, what we'll do is we'll add a little bit more of ginger on top. Why? So that the ginger, when it goes on this stage, it will flavor the water we've added, and when it is reduced, it will intensify even more. Okay, now you need some coriander. So what I'll do is I'll just pull some coriander from the bunch and I'll take the sticks out till here. Around 3 inches of the sticks go away for this recipe. I'll throw it on the side and now I shall finally chop the coriander. Turn it around, flip it, and now go really close. Go as close as you can. And the end part goes in the bin. As you can see, it's nicely boiling over here. I'm going to add the coriander on top, spread it out, and just press it down a little bit. I shall cook this till the broth goes away, or almost it goes away up to 80%, which will take around 5 to 6 minutes on high heat. So till the time it's cooking, we should clean up and then I shall show you the final look of the recipe. So as you can see, today's recipe is ready. It was very easy. It's a recipe which is full of, you could say, flavor. It has vegetables, it has beef. Beef, basically veal, which is basically the smaller version of the bigger meat. And it was cooked quickly if you have a pressure cooker. And in the end, I will just splash a little bit of lemon. Why? Because too much shouldn't be added in the recipe, because some people do not like the bitter flavor or the tangy flavor of lemon, and I always serve some lemon and some green chilies on the side. Why? Because Pakistanis love to add a little more zing to it, and we love green chilies in terms of the spice level. You might be thinking that how could a person have green chilies, but trust me, when it comes to Pakistan, one person can easily have 6 pieces of green chilies alone in one meal. I'll see you in another episode of Indus Cuisine. If you have any queries, you can go to our Indus News YouTube page and you can go search Indus Cuisine and comment in the section down below and let me know if you want to learn anything new. And now I shall take my leave. Take care of yourself, lovely people. Bye-bye.